Thank you very much, Yoni. You're too kind. Thank the Rav for hosting us tonight. And also, aside from the fact that Yoni brought me here, I didn't know he'd put me to work. But also, of course, said, "I'll take care of you." "I'll take care of you" means he dumped me at the care of his parents. All right. Jackie, Mr. Sabak, thank you very much. Okay, I was asked to talk about issues surrounding Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is one of the Yud Gimel Ikarim. The Rambam gave us 13 principles that you cannot properly observe Torah or be serious that Torah is an absolute reality without awareness of these 13 ideas. And one of them is Tchias HaMesim. That means like this. Let me explain this very briefly. That every word of Torah is true, and all the events chronicled by the Torah is true. All right. So let's sort of take, for example, Akedat Yitzchak. That story of how Avinu passed the supreme test and was prepared to do the supreme sacrifice.
No, stand up.
Well, I should stand up. What?
Whatever.
It's better. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So it's a story about Kedat Yitzchak. Of course, you have to believe in it because it's in the Torah. But let's say you never learned about it. So you're still a believing Jew because you believe the Torah is true. You're just not informed as to what the Torah contains. Right? But when the Rambam singles out Tchiyat HaMeitim, it's not enough to believe. I believe whatever it says in Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim is true. You have to be actively aware of Tchiyat HaMeitim as a prerequisite to accepting Torah as an absolute truth. So the question is why that is, and we will get to that at the end of our remarks. But here is the interesting, amazing irony. The Rambam, who legislated that Tchiyat HaMeitim is one of the big 13 that every Jew has to be aware of, actively aware of. And he also brings in Hilchot Tshuva, right? That someone who's kofar b'Tchiyat HaMeitim, that denies that there is ein lo chelek haba. The Rambam who wrote all that was accused of not believing in Tchiyat HaMeitim. And then for that reason, he wrote it towards the end of his life, Igeret Tchiyat HaMeitim, the letter regarding Tchiyat HaMeitim, where he had to defend himself. And his opening line over there is that, I feel like the attack on me reminds me of the Christians' brilliant proof of the Trinity. That, is there any pasuk that more declares our faith in one God than Shema Yisrael? Right? Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Right? And the Christians come and say, it's perfect. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Three that are one. Right? No. The people who are attacking me, who wrote that, Tchiyat HaMeitim is one of the Yud Gimel Ikrim. And I write Lahalacha and Hilchos Tshuva, everyone's Kofar K'Yatrim has, no Chelek in Olam Haba. Right? And me, after writing all that, they accuse me of not believing in Tchiyat HaMeitim. How did it happen? Right? How did this... So, because the Rambam writes in Perek Chet of the Hilchot Tshuva that in Olam Haba there's no body. There's no body. Right? And so, there's no body, so wait a minute, what about Tchiyat HaMeitim? The assumption, and we'll discuss this, the assumption was that when the body comes back, right, it'll be here forever. Right? The resurrected body doesn't die again. That was what was assumed, and we'll discuss this, right, by Rav Sadiq. Right? And there seems to be a lashon in Chazal that would support that. But I want to deal with this from a pure philosophical vantage point. Why is it that we have to believe that we ought to believe, right, that the resurrected body will last forever? Right? Because the body was an equal partner in doing the mitzvot. Right? You get Olam Haba for the mitzvot that you did. The neshama couldn't do the mitzvot alone. Right? Had to come down in the body. Equal partners in the actions that produce the eternal reward. So they have to share in it together. Right? So now, what is the argument the other way? Well, it's a Gemara in Brachot, actually a few places in Shas. Right? Olam haba, ein b'hem lo achila v'lo shtia. Right? El tzadikim yoshvim va'atarotem baroshem v'nenim ziv hashchina. We don't eat, we don't drink in olam haba, right? We just enjoy the divine aura, right? So, say Rav Sadia Gaon and others. So that's not a problem. Look, Moshe Rabbeinu right now, Elul. You know what is the precedent for Elul? Because on Rosh Chodesh Elul, Moshe Rabbeinu was summoned again to come to Shamayim with the Luchot Avanim that were engraved and then subsequently given to us, the Luchot Shel Kedan Yom Kippur. But that was the third time he did this. He went up to Shamayim for 40 days, 40 nights, and Moshe Rabbeinu himself attests that Lechem lo achalti, right? I didn't eat, I didn't drink, I didn't sleep. You know, when the body goes to a heavenly sphere, right, it could exist without eating and drinking. Right? Chazal referred to, actually Chazal referenced that and says that this is where Ozo bekartaya, Ozo benimusaya. That is the real phrase. You guys say, when in Rome, do like the Romans, right? That's not, you know. And Chazal said, you go to it, Azal bekartaya, you go to a karta, a city, keep the nimusim, keep the conduct there. When the body goes to heaven, right, it keeps the minhagim of heaven, and it's, you know, and doesn't eat, doesn't drink. By the way, it goes the other way also. Because I'll say, you know, the angels that came to Avram, you know, he prepared them a meal. How'd they eat it? Same principle. Azo bekarta, azo b'nusaya. You come to earth, you got to follow the minhagim of earth. So angels come down here, they can eat. Body goes up there, right? Doesn't have to eat. So what's the problem? So there's no achil, no shit. Doesn't mean there can't be a body there. The body can live off ziv hashchina, like Moshe Rabbeinu lived off ziv hashchina when he went to heaven, 40 days and 40 nights. 3 times he did that, right? But also Eliyahu Hanavi went up with his body to Shamayim. So that should not be a that should not be a problem. So the body will continue to exist and enjoy eternal reward in a world where you don't eat and don't drink. It's supposedly fun anyway, right? It's hard to imagine with all this in front of us, but really, right? That's what we have to believe, right? Why did the Rambam say? You know, there's no body in Olam Haba, right? You know, so what forced the Rambam to say that all these things like Sudat HaLeviatan, right? You know, it's all metaphorical. You know, what that means, if there's time, you'll remind me, I'll get back to that. You know, his son, Rabbeinu Avram ben Rambam, came back to explain what the Sudat HaLeviatan is a metaphor for. Well, so it was. So they suspected Ram, since he doesn't believe that there's a body in Olam Haba, he must not really believe in Tchiyat HaMetim. So, so for that purpose, the Rambam wrote Ziger Tchiyat HaMetim, and he poses, of course I believe in Tchiyat HaMetim, and he also explains, you know, Derech Aga, once he gets through that, why he could have easily learned all the psukim in Yecheskel, he could have learned it all allegorically. And he didn't, right? He took it literally. As Rabbi Tchiyat HaMetim. All these chazals, he could have, no, I believe Tchiyat HaMetim, and so he's very informative over there. He lays out his 4 criteria of when you are motzi mikra mipshuto, to say it's just a mashal. He had a science as to when he decides that something is metaphorical. And I do not remember offhand, you know, the 4 criteria, right? I wasn't expecting to do this. But that's where he lays it out. And he says, oh no, all the psukim about Tchiyat HaMetim did not meet the 4 criteria, so we take them to Pshuto. There is Tchiyat HaMetim. But just because there's Tchiyat HaMetim doesn't mean, which happens in this world, you know, at the end of time, doesn't mean the body has to go to Olam Haba. And he says, I'll tell you why. Because the body in Olam Haba would be a Bria Levatala. It would be a creation for naught. Right? So think about it, you know. Think about how the body's constructed. It's all constructed how to survive. So says the Rambam. What? You know, you're gonna have a stomach, right? And you don't eat. You're gonna have kishkas, you know, not the one you made, right? 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 Yeah, and you don't excrete. You have lungs and you don't smoke, right? It'll be, you know, the whole thing will be, you know, it's a waste. There's nothing good about sustaining a creature that has no function and no purpose. And says the Rambam, addressing the questions of his opponents, said, don't bring me a proof from Moshe or from Eliyahu. Right? They needed their bodies because they needed it from when they come down again. So he only went up to heaven on a temporary basis. He needed, so because he still needed the body for when he comes down. Right, so while he was in heaven, he lived off Ziv Ashkina, right? But it's not a Briel Vatal because he still needs his body when he comes down. Eliyahu Hanavi still needs his body because he's sent down on missions. Right? He has missions to perform. We know. Right? We believe Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to Tanoi Mamorai, he needs his body. Right? So for him, his body being sustained by the divine energy is not a Briel Vatal because he needs it for the missions that he performs. But in Olam Haba, where it's always going to be a world of Ziv Ashkina, right? Forever and ever and ever, the body is a Briel Vatala. That was the argument of the Rambam. So then the Mekubalim later in history got involved, and they constructed a model to satisfy both sides of the argument. Very interesting. Actually, when you want to get to this, they're actually closer to the Rambam when I have to explain what their position actually is. Right? So of course the argument is the body has to get schar mitzvah just like the neshama, equal partner. Right? They added another factor that the body has a hidden dimension to it. The concept of tzelem Elokim also applies to the body, not obviously in the physical sense, but we know that the body shapes, the body are metaphors for certain divine conduct. We have eyes to be a mashal for the hashgacha of Enei Hashem Henim Mishotatot Ba'aretz. We have ears as a mashal for Tiena Aznecha Kashuvot Lekol Tachanunai. Right? Our body parts have a certain spirituality to them, in the fact that when we say that they're a mashal, right? For these types of forms of hashgacha that you're also mashgiach, that means there's actually a lot to even learn from their physical shape, metaphorically, when you start abstracting it. Like, why do you have two eyes? Why is like a big one, and right? Like, why do you have two eyes? Why do you have two ears? Right? Right? And we're going to do it. No, because ayin tova, ayin ra. Right? There's hashgacha when Rebbe looks upon us. Then there's vayashkifu al pnei stom, vayashkif en hashkafa el l'ra. There's to look in a judgmental way. There's to look in a kind way, right? There's and the same thing also. Two nostrils. Vayarach Hashem et reach hanichoach. You take in nachas, and then there's haronaf, right? Anger. So the body is meant to be a mashal, of course, not physical, God forbid. But even from the physical state, when you abstract it, it's a mashal for the hanhaga of how the Rosham runs the world, right? And true to form, the Zohar, and it's also in the Kuzari, and it's in the Igeris that the Rambam said, and it's the Malbim brings it that all the kalim in the Mishkan are parallel to the human form, right? The Aron held the luchos, the heart, right? The kruvim on top of the arm is like the lungs on top of the heart. Right? The body, has a certain spiritual dimension to it, that of course is not the way it physically appears. You have to think abstractly. So it's kedusha saguf, right? The truth is, to get we'll make it a little bit more particular, right? The Rebbe Shalom, generally speaking, runs the world with two forms of hashgacha, generally two categories of hashgacha, right? One is called ha'aras panim. He's giving. One's called hester panim, where he's withdrawing and hiding himself. Says the Ramchal in the Das Tunis, the neshama is a living microcosm of the whole hanhog of ha'aras panim, right? Of God shining and being mashpia, right? And the guf is a microcosm of the hester panim. And therefore, the duality of the body that we explained, right side, left side, that you have in hester panim. Because when things are hidden, there are a lot of, there's only one straight line between 2 points, right? But you can have infinite crooked ones when things are defeated, and that's why the body is made up of a lot of parts, And duality, that's in Hester Panim. In Horus Panim, there's just pure oneness. Not, right? Yes.
Why would you need Hester Panim with that symbolism in Olam when everything is so clear?
Oh, very good. Very good. Right? Excellent. No, and that's why the Ramchal, in his model, I'm going to say the Ramchal's model, once, especially as you raise this issue, which actually logistically comes out closer to the Rambam. We'll get there. Right? Right. So there's another reason. The body's holy. Right? The body has a kedusha to it, as it's supposed to serve as a mashal for the different hanhagas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's a living microcosm of Hester Panim, and that's the end of Purim, by the way. Purim is a chag of the body, right? Right. And back when I was in yeshiva, my yeshiva days, everyone knows famous Tikkunei Zor, Purim, Kippurim, right? And it's a day, Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim. What's the commonality? So we used to say in yeshiva, because there are just 2 days here you don't learn a word. Yom Kippur and Purim, right? No, but happens to be that really the Goyen says that the Yom Kippur and Purim are actually 2 halves of the same day, because every Yom Tov you need Chetzol Lashem and Chetzol Lachem. You got to split it. The way to do it, the Ram writes in Hilchos Yom Tov, you should really get up and daven netz and just be in shul until Chatzot, daven mincha, then go home, ochlim v'shotim ad chashecha. Next Yom Tov, you guys do it that way. Okay, do it right, right. You're supposed to split it. So the question is, on Yom Kippur, where's your Chetzol Lachem? And on Purim, where's your Chetzol Lashem? They're 2 halves of the same day. Yom Kippur is a holiday of Ha'oras Panim. And since unmitigated Ha'oras Panim, that's why we don't eat and we don't drink. It's a day of pure spirituality. The Rebbe Buddha used to say, he wants to abolish all fasts. That's okay with me, right? Except 2. There are 2 fasts that he would still keep, right? Tisha B'Av, because how can you eat? And Yom Kippur, because you don't need to eat. Really, Yom Kippur is like a day, we feel Ziv Hashchina. It's a day of pure Ha'aras Panim, and the body lives off the Ruchnias. So I say, well, why? Like angels. And Purim, right, is Esther min HaTorah minayin, v'anochi haster aster panai. The whole ness of Purim is to understand that God is in Hester Panim also. It's also from Hashem. That's what we come to the realization that hein gvurosov, hein norosov. When by Korban Abayis, if I'm digressing, if I'm branching out too much, you can just stop me and tell me, rein me in, right? Right. By Korban Abayis, the Gemara says in Yuma, right? So Daniel and Yirmiyahu, they got upset, right? Like the tragedy. And even though it was before the era of formalized prayer, Jews always had the custom of saying Hagadol Hagibor Vano. So Daniel and Yirmiyahu said, Noshim Mishabdim Babanav, Aye Gvurosav, the guys are beating up on us. Where's God's might? Right? And they said, that Goy Macharkim Bechon, and they're dancing where they used to be based. Where's Aye no Rosa? Right? Where's his awesomeness? So they stopped saying Gibor and No, which they were allowed to do because prayer wasn't formalized yet anyway. Right? Then Anshe Knesset Hagdola said, Adarabba, Hein Gvurotav, Hein Norotav. Just the opposite. It's a matter of perspective. That in Galut, we actually see God's might, and we see his awesomeness. We see his might because if someone would pick on your kid, right, he'd be, right? Curtains for the guy, right? And the Goyim are picking on us and picking up, persecuting us, and the Rebbe Shalom, he restrains himself. That's Gvurosa, right? And Hein no Rosa, this is also said, what is the secret of Jewish survival? In the Golus, we're surrounded by enemies, and we neither assimilate nor are obliterated. That's awesome. It's a matter of perspective. So ask the Radziner, right? How did Anshe Knesset Hagdola, who were on a lower level, figure out what Daniel and Yirmiyahu, who were in Nevi'im, couldn't figure out? Says they had an edge. They lived through the story of Purim. Anshe Knesset Hagdola were in the Bezdin at the time of Mordechai, the Bezdin of Ezra Asoka. The Nes of Purim taught us that Hester Panim is also from Hashem. And that's why, and that's the Kedusha Saguf. And that's why it's a Chag. Purim's a Chag of Guf. Oh, Guf, it's the recognition. And Hester Panim is also from him. So the body is holy. It's a microcosm of this Midah of Hester Panim. So another reason why the body should have some type of spiritual ongoing existence. Right. So now this gentleman, what was your name? Usher. Raised a very good point. In Olam Haba, there's no Hester Punim. Right? So now, not only that, if there would be any Hester Punim in Olam Haba, right? That would detract from the revelation. We want unmitigated Horas Punim, unmitigated divine revelation. So, which is actually a Kabbalistic point to the favor of the Rambam, that there shouldn't be a body because there shouldn't be any Hester Punim. No. But what happens, so says the Ramchal, we're going to go with his model, but all the Mekubalim said roughly the same thing, each one in their own nuance. Ramchal says like this, right? No, the body's got to come back for all the reasons that Rav Gaon said, and because of the kedusha that the body has, right? But just like La'atid Lavod, the Rebbe is going to synthesize the Hester Punim with the Oras Punim, because remember, Hester Punim created all that is physical, because all that physical is not spiritual. So all that's physical was created from Hester Punim. The Hester Punim is going to be merged and elevated to be one with the Horas Punim. Right? And that signifies the recognition that these two Hanhagot came from the same one God. Now that message has to come across. That message has to come across. So also in his model, and you have to be patient for this, in his model it's a 10,000 year process. So I hope no one's in a rush, right? The body is going to come back, and just like the Midah of Hester Punim will be incorporated within the Oras Punim, the body will be elevated and be incorporated together with the Neshama to be one perfect spiritual being. So which means that all the Rambam's objections are answered. Right? And he says it's a, I said it's a 10,000 year process that includes, the 6,000 years that we had ahead of, right? But, so in the 8th millennium, right, the body comes back, actually, even at the, it happens right at the end of the 6th. It happens right at the 6th. So we said, Scottsdale 18 starts in this world. It is the last event of the 6,000 years of this world. Right? Body comes back, right? As we know. All the organs, everything. Right? So now in the 7th millennium, it's water everywhere. Climate change is real. The only problem is that we're very behind schedule. Right? We have to have the world flooded, right, in just 200 and, right? Because I'll say, there's going to be water everywhere. We are so behind schedule. You see, God was hoping we'd invent the combustion engine a few hundred years earlier, right? So if you're ever, you have a day that you're burnt out, you can't learn, you can't dive, and don't give up on yourself. You're a yid, and there's a lot of good you can do. Take the car out for a spin, right? Put some emissions in the air and move the wheel of destiny forward, right? Right.
Hashem said there wouldn't be another flood.
No, flood during the 6,000 years. No, but then the world, gets closed for renovations for 1,000 years. Which one? If anyone's done renovations, it's not a pellet. It takes 1,000 years, right? Never done on time. Right? So for 1,000 years, the world is flooded. V'ma Kodesh Baruch Hu said also tarikim knafayim v'shatim al pnei hamayim. Chazal say the Rebbe Shalom makes the tzadikim kivyachol sprout wings and they hover over the water. Right? So now, and the Ramchal explains the wings is the koach of the neshama. The neshama starts overtaking the body. Those are the wings. The power of the neshama is expanding. And now they are hovering over the water. That parallels the situation of Moshe, being in heaven, hovering over the water, and when the body's in heaven, it doesn't need to eat and drink. Right? And that's for the 7th millennium. Right? And that much already is written in the Gemara. Right? Right? And Nigla. But then says the Ramchal al Pisod, right? In the 8th millennium, right? So the body starts, disappearing because it's becoming assimilated with the neshama. In the 8th millennium, the more gross aspects, from the navel downwards, the excretory system in these days, man's grosser disappear. They've been turned into ruknias because they're the less honorable parts of man. Right? In the but we still retain, let's say, the head, and the more dignified aspects of the body. Right? In the 8th millennium, right, we start, those things also start disappearing, right? In course, the 8th millennium, right? Not because they're becoming assimilated in the neshama. In the 9th millennium, right? So the neshama, as we know it, if a person would be looking at it, would just see that there's this general thing called something that used to be a body as we know it, but most of it has been turned to ruchaniyut. In the 10th millennium, ha'asiri yiyeh kodesh, and that's where there's the perfect fusion of the guf and the neshama. The guf has been totally elevated that you wouldn't be able to discern a body. You would look at the people and you would just say that the guf is one of the kochot, one of the talents that are nichlal in the neshama. Right? So that has been the conventionally accepted. This type of model has been conventionally accepted by Klal Yisrael, for anyone who actually studied the topic. And this model solves all the issues, and all the concerns of both schools of thought are satisfied. Right? And you think about it logistically, it comes out that they're close in the logistics of it. They're closer to the Rambam than the other side. I say the body has become totally assimilated with the neshama, but there is a metzias of guf. Okay, so now let's talk about other issues. We mentioned Sadia Gon. So here's the question: a man gets eaten by a lion, right? And then the lion drowns, and a bunch of fish eat the lion, and then the fish, scatter, and they're fished up by people from different four corners of the world. And now these fish are in the people's stomachs, and go to the grave with them. Where's God going to bring that body back from? Is a question that Sadia Gon asked. Right. So he answers it, using the chemistry of the day, the chemistry of his time, but we can abstract it and make it relevant to us also. So he worked with the model of 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire. He says, in his understanding of chemistry. Are you okay?
Yes.
Weather.
Major
Climate change.
Climate change. Right. Anyway, he understood that once the guf is broken up to basic particles, it actually rejoins the elements. The earth aspect of his body goes back to the element of earth, the cosmic element of earth, and the water aspect of his body goes to the cosmic element of water, and the Rebbe will now reconstitute the bodies, but it will be the same nanoparticles, the exact same nanoparticles. Yes?
How does that apply to cremation?
What?
You say that people who are cremated don't come back to
No, first of all, listen, that doesn't, first of all, like the people who are cremated by Nazis, they're going to come back. No, we're going to talk about that in a second. But I really should have prefaced that there are those that say maybe Tchiyat HaMeitim is cloning. How about that? Maybe we're all going to be cloned. It'll be clones of us, right? And Chazal already negated that. And when we go full circle of why it's one of the Yud Gimel Ikri, you'll understand why we have to. But Chazal already negated that, right? And Chazal said that if a person had a blemish, something really embarrassing, right? Like by resurrection, you're going to have to deal with it. Omdin b'mumam, any defect that you had, a mum, you get up out of the kever with it. Umitrapit, then subsequently you're healed. Why the initial embarrassment? Right, so of course, there are people who deserve shame. That and the Mishnah Berurah brings in his Hakdam Leilchus Shabbos. Right? No, so says the Chazal. Chazal say, "Omdim b'mumam mitrapid." You get up with any defect. If you're missing a finger, because that you will initially get out of the grave with that finger missing, and then it'll grow back. Why? Shelo yomru elu hemis v'achri mechya. That no one should say these people died, and these are just copies that think they're the original. Chazal with that are prophetically eliminating the idea that Tchiyat HaMeitim is cloning. You see? Just the opposite, to show it's the same guy. Mamish, not a copy of the guy. It's him himself. That's why.
What's the concept, like, why would that be bad? Why would it be a copy?
Well, so that's very good. Like, what is the philosophical necessity? That gets into why it's one of the Yud Gimel. I said we're going to answer that. But what I've seen people say, it's cloning, it's baloney. Chazal Baruch Kochem already foresaw people would say that and said for that reason, Omdim b'mumam u'mitrapim. If you had a scar, this to prove it's not a clone, it's the same guy, right? Mamash. Every nanoparticle is from the same guy that went in the grave, right? And that's we understand why Rav Cohen was so far. It has to be every nanoparticle. So where's he going to bring it from? It's scattered, right? So he says, it rejoins the basic elements, and he will reconstitute it particle by particle from the basic elements. Even though we have a different model of chemistry, but this is for sure what we believe. Leave it to God to do it. But when I learned this from Sadia Gaon, it occurred to me that this is the pshat in a Gemara that 3 weeks wasn't so long ago. So everyone learns the Agadatas and Gittin, by there's the Agadatot of Korban Abayit on the second Parakhan Nizakin. So, so one of the tragic stories over there is that a bunch of kids were taken captive, right? And the women knew, that they were going to be used for what the coyotes use women for. What's going on right now at the southern border, human trafficking. Hashem Yirachim. The women understood that that's what they were going to be used for. So they went to the boys and asked the following question. If we drown ourselves, will we have Tchias HaMesa? And he said, one of them, Darshan, Mibosha Ashiv Min Tzulos Yam. Yes, Hashem said, I will bring you back in from the depths of the sea. And with that, they all jumped overboard, and then the boys said, if they could do it, we could do it also. Right? What was the question? If we drown ourselves, what's the answer to drown, or if you're killed by the sword? What?
Suicide would be the problem?
Yeah, so I think you're asking something else. They weren't asking about that because they asked about drowning. And the pasuk was, Oshiv min tzlasyon, come to the depth of the ocean. They were asking of Sadia Gaon's question. Because if you drown yourself, you're going to be eaten by fish. The fish are going to scatter. They were really bothered by Rav Sadia Gaon's kasha. Right? Right? The answer is that even in tzlasyon, where you're sure you disintegrate, Hashem will bring you back. Right? Okay, so now, yes?
Multiple lives to believe part of this model?
Yes. Okay, so now So now I'll tell you, the answer is not all the different Googling come back, right? But this is not an iron fast rule, right? So now the Beis Yosef, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, had a chavrusa with the Malach. So it's written in the Sefer Magid Meisharim, right? That the Malach told the Beis Yosef that all the Gilgulim come back. Because listen, each one of those incarnations earned eternal life. Each one of those bodies did mitzvot. Each one of the bodies comes back. Listen, the neshama is powerful enough to power a lot of different bodies. It doesn't. The neshama is quite powerful, and he says over there, and now that the neshama got more powerful with each incarnation. With each incarnation, the neshama got more powerful because of the mitzvot it did here. And then it got more powerful because of the mitzvot it did there. So especially with all that added power of its mitzvot and all different incarnations, it's bekocho to animate all the different bodies. Right? And then they say there's a Sefer Medrash Shmuel on Pirkei Avos. I do believe it's brought there also. But in the Shara Gilgulim, the Arizar says, listen, depends why that incarnation happened. Right? Sometimes an incarnation is just to fix just one thing. Right? One thing. And those incarnations may not necessarily come back. They weren't there as to be whole citizens, but just as a supplement. Okay. So we'll wait and see. Right? The
But he's also asking what age does as a 30-year-old, as a 20-year-old?
Prime of life. But again, ultimately prime of life, but omdim b'mumam u'misrakim, any embarrassing identification marks, come out of the grave with you that the Rebbe Shem brought back the same guy. not a replica that thinks it's, right? Okay, so now we're decided to go and also ask the following question. All right, and I understand that Yomi tells me that the Rav dealt with it. You know, if a man was married to, a woman was married twice, you know, so by Tchiyat Beitim, who is she married to? Right? A man married two sisters, you know, in the sense that you're allowed to marry a Chas v'sholom. If the first sister dies, you can't marry two sisters, they're both alive. You know, even if you divorce one, if she's still alive, you can't marry the sister, but if one died, you can marry her sister. By Tchiyat Beitim, which sister are you married to? The first or the second? Are you married both? Right? And all these other, you know, nice questions. Rav decided to go and punt it. He said, why should I paskin that? It will be audacious. It's Tchias HaMesim. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be there. Rabbi Akiva is going to be there. They'll make a bezdin. They'll paskin it then.
I need to know where to bury. Nafkamina, where to bury the husband next to the first wife or second wife.
Yeah. That's what he said.
Sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
One is buried in Brazil, the other one in Israel. Where do you put the husband?
Yeah. So that's what he says. Oh yeah. And, so I guess now we'll go full circle as to why is this Ikrei Emunah? Right? It's like awareness of Tchias HaMesim is a you're not a good Jew. You can't be serious that Torah is absolute truth if you're not aware of Tchias HaMesim. So now the Rambam in Igeres Tchias HaMesim said something very general, which we had a hard time with in my sefer. Rabbi Abulafia is quoting my sefer. You get it from him. No, I gave it to him. So the Rambam in Igeres Tchias HaMesim speaks very generally, but he leaves a lot of questions unanswered. Said that anyone who doesn't believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, because it's just too hard, he doesn't really believe in any miracles. Yeah. Right? That's it. So it's like the miracle that sets the bar, right? Well, why wouldn't you believe that? Because you don't really believe in God's absolute power. But obviously, he left more unsaid than said. The one who was explained this, very, very well was the Leshem, Rabbi Yoshev's grandfather, Baal Leshem Shlo Bachloma, and he says, I have no doubt when the Rambam legislated that Tchiyat HaMesim is one of the Yud Gimel Ikrim, it was Beruach HaKodesh, he writes, right? Because it's an amazing thing. So let's think about this. He writes, it's pretty depressing. You have 10 generations from Adam until Noah. How much success was there? None, right? Because I'll say they all got him angry. 10 generations, billions of people, right? And they all got, so one guy was kind of successful, was Noah, right? 10 generations from Noah until Avram, right? Then, so how many are successful? None, just Avram Avinu. Right? Except that obviously they don't count. They're not on. They're not giving Barsham the.
Is the flattery.
That's it. Next level.
They say it does
Can we say that someone that does not believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, that is one of Yud Gimel Ikarim,
That's right.
does not believe in Borei Olam?
He doesn't believe in the absolute power of Borei Olam. I'm going to explain why. So, but think about it. So now look at history. Let's look at history. This is the Leshem who says this, right? So now billions of people, Rebbe got no nachas. He created a world to have nachas. Yichvor Hashem Lolam, Yismach Hashem B'Maasav, right? Right? So now, and then you go, okay, so now you go, so Avram Avinu, how many are successful in the next generation?
Nobody's in, nobody's out.
Right? Right. So,
You can have a lot of people like from the afterlife kind of come in and do the shir.
right.
Next we're gonna hear
All right, so then the next generation, how many are successful? Just one, Yitzchak. Next generation, just one, Yaakov. Next generation, all right, 12. We have the Shvatim, but there's also millions and millions more people in the world. So now look, if you know, 9 more hours, no quality, but Amol, you know, let's say, once upon a time, good old days, when there used to be quality control. So let's say, I remember hearing in my youth that the Sony Corporation, you know, whatever they produced, remember the Walkman, right? So one out of like 100,000 had to be recalled, right? So like the Japs, you know, can we say that? It's not right. Right, yeah. Right. So, yeah, on their assembly line, they have 1 out of 100,000. That's a blooper, right? And on the Rebosham's assembly line of history, 1 out of millions is successful. It looks terrible. Right? God's out of control. He wanted a world, and he wanted, and he didn't want to give his resources to the Rishoyim that seemed to, be taking all the resources for themselves. Says the Lashon, Tchias HaMesim is a cosmic state that all that you think was lost and wasted comes back. And it becomes clarified, not one iota of God's world was wasted. The Russia just wasted the Nakuda of his identity, because even his body will come back, but not as him. So they can come back as themselves, as citizens. All the kokos, all energies that there ever were, come back. Olam Haba is made out of the reconstituted Olam Hazeh. The Olam Haba is a world of Tchias HaMesim. Right? And that's why it's so important for the guy himself to come back. The guy himself, and every nanoparticle to come back. That to show you never depleted God's world 1 iota. The Rishoyim that did bad, they just wasted their own, the Nakuda called their, sense of self. That's all that got wasted. They didn't deplete God's world 1 iota. So that's the big revelation of Tchiyat HaMeitim. No waste. No waste. No, you cannot waste God's world. You have an opportunity to use it to earn Olam Haba for yourself, but you will never. The Rebbe Shalom, his assembly line is of 100% efficiency. Nothing gets lost from eternality, and that's so important for our emunah, because otherwise you look at history, so even if in the future it'll be good, Mashiach will come, but what about all the generations that went through the Holocaust, that suffered, all the loss, all the waste, what about that? It all comes back like Tchias HaMesim show that nothing. Ribor Shalom is of infinite power, not 1 iota gets lost. And of course, you need that cognizance to relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being of absolute power. Ve'eno movado. L'chaim.
Aye.